Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Hermit, starting to make progress again with my ailment. I mean, I'm not up and around much, but I'm not as disoriented spatially as I was yesterday, or with chills and things like that. So when I feel a little better, I'm supposed to go get blood tests done. So maybe tomorrow, when I feel well enough to drive the 3/4 mile I need to go. But I've been thinking again about this younger woman, I think it's a woman, pretty sure, who has had some kind of catastrophic suffering and disablement at her young age, and is working at, she says she's still learning how to unite her suffering to Christ. And that's something that we learn to think about it in our mind, even of visualizing ourselves up with Christ on his cross. That helps to visualize that. Or that he's even got one arm around us. He's on the cross, but holding us up with one arm to his cross, and we put our arms out over his and grab his hands and imagine our hands being nailed to his cross, that we're there with him. That's part of the process I went through for years of visualizing it, to help me understand the supernatural element of it and the reality that I, deep down in my heart, was willing and wanting to offer my sufferings and unite them with his sufferings in a sense of gratitude to him for how he suffered, sacrificed himself for our salvation, but also just as a means of love of him, in my sense, it probably sounds silly and juvenile, or it's very human, of my wanting him to, and I know he doesn't feel this way, but to feel not alone, that I want to be there with him, for him. And he's there for me, of course. He's here with me, even now. So that's Lovey. No, not doing that. No, lay down. They were all calmed down. I thought they could make it without going to their crates, but we'll see how this works out. So, and then praying, but other ways of learning how to unite our sufferings with Christ is in those times, which happen often at first, especially, of wishing we weren't in the position we've been placed, that we've been allowed, and of then all the more asking Jesus to help us unite with him. Help us to have his attitude, his sacrificial attitude, and his understanding of dying to self, and of greater purpose and greater mission, of the spiritual mission, and of beyond this temporal world, what our sacrifice of suffering accomplishes for souls not even on this earth. So the more that we can, when, these thoughts will come to mind, and it helps to read books of victim souls. Maybe I need to gather a few of those and share some of the books that we can read about victim souls and about suffering that help from those who went through what we're going through, from start to end, and from the beginning through to when they are in later years, or reading of those who died young from the suffering. And a lot of times, the suffering could be exacerbated by people and how they were treated in other time periods. I've always had a place in my heart for Saint Bernadette of Lourdes. This little girl, and adults decided. The adults, her parents, and the priest and the bishop decided that they didn't want her in that town. They didn't want her at home anymore. Too many people were seeking her out. She wasn't the focus. Well, she knew that. But they decided for her she would be put in a convent. And she was maybe 10 years or 12 by then, maybe. Not very old. And off she went to an unknown place, convent. The Mother Superior was resentful of her for having such a grace happen to her, and concerned, wanted to make sure she wasn't going to be proud. So she had all the other sisters line up. She made little Bernadette stand out there and say what happened, what transpired, and Bernadette was forced to tell. But then the Mother Superior said, this will be the last time you will ever speak of it to anyone, and told all the sisters you're not to talk to her about it at all. That's off limits. And Bernadette was immediately, put to work as a novice, a postulant, alone, didn't know anyone, had this profound experience that she never asked for, had been nothing but honest with the village priest and her mother. She was beaten by her mother for several times over because she said what had happened, and the mother thought she was making up this lie and taking on airs, and that it was sinful to make up a story involving herself with the Virgin Mary. And finally then the priest realized that the little girl was telling the truth, but not after Bernadette had been severely punished, beaten by her mother, and upbraided by him. He didn't believe her, but asked her, ask her what her name is. And then the Virgin Mary gave the Immaculate Conception. I am the Immaculate Conception. And the priest knew that no one else in that village would know. That was a new title that was only then being decided upon at higher levels in the church, that Mary was the Immaculate Conception, born and conceived immaculately without sin. So he knew then that this was real and contacted the bishop and etc. But Bernadette didn't have any say in her life. That came out of nowhere. I liked how this person said events that it seems, sufferings that come out of nowhere, and your life is totally changed for good. Irreversible are some of these ailments that we have, or injuries, accidents that happen. But over the years, I more and more learned God's view of my situation through prayer and listening and coming to an understanding of the suffering as a positive and intended, and also as a means that God had to have my life be better for my children. He provided a means for me to be a mother to them in a way that I wouldn't have been otherwise, had I been back to work, and I would have been out changing my career and doing that, which would have been more time away, or studying, which if you're studying, you're time away from your children in the evening, or mentally away. Your mind is thinking of other matters. So God knew deep down my love of my children and wanting to be a mother and to be home more with them. So he arranged that, and he wanted it. God wanted it also. And he did not want me back in the world. He wanted me as a hermit way back before I even had a word for it. Hibernation, he had it called. First told me that I would have to learn to hibernate like a bear for protection from the world. So God, these things don't come out of nowhere. I am convinced of that. But I don't expect other people to be. It's a process. All of this coming into an understanding of our suffering and of our debilitation and of our total life change. Life will never be the same as it was, and it will be quite different than most all people in the world. And there's just no way around it. Other people will try to say, but this and that, and you can do this, and oh, how wonderful for this and that. They don't know what the person goes through in accepting and coming to grips with the tremendous shock of having died. And I'm not talking my death experience now. I'm talking life as we knew it, gone for good. And in just little ways, too. I kept thinking I could still remarry some wonderful man who would love me and treat me decently and respect and honor me, be faithful. And me to him also. I was faithful, but, to honor and to love both ways. And to love my children and to be a good father for them. Not selfish, not all into himself and out philandering with women instead of being home. So, but I had to, that took longer for me. And God let that stretch out for a good 10 years of my flirting with that idea that I still maybe would meet the man of my dreams, even though I had been told I was espoused to God. But I still thought, well, that just means spiritually, just spiritually. Now, it doesn't mean in the temporal world, I could still be married to a human husband. And also, I thought of all the help that would be financially. And that I felt that I would feel better too, that my pain would be less, because somehow I had it in my mind, that a lot of the stress, because, other people suggested it to me, that a lot of it's in your mind, and it's stress, and it's, loneliness, for adult company and all. No, it wasn't. It was all physical pain. But they work, other people do a lot of their own ideas, even like, well, take this supplement, take these herbs, you don't need to take any medicine. God will heal you, or go to this meditation group and you'll be healed, And people would come, do their healing, like the man with his crystals and the goofy little guy who said he was an Air Force colonel and had been retired. And no, I realized later, no, he wasn't. Lovey, I say no. Lay down. So these are all things in general that you go through. This person, and like the learning to unite your sufferings with Christ, it's a process, that too is. And I think the best thing to do is to ask Jesus to help us learn how to unite our sufferings, and he will teach us in different ways over time. The other one that this person wrote down or mentioned, and that was the struggle with fully, let me get my glasses on, and I don't know, I hope this video works out, because having dogs that are being a little bit bothered by, they want to do something else right now. The struggle with feeling unaccomplished. Yes, I felt that a great deal. Not at first, I didn't. I kept thinking because I'm a pusher and I'm determined. And I thought that I could overcome this. Even my surgeon would have talks with me. He'd say things like, "You can't think yourself through this. You can't read yourself through this. You're going to have to come to acceptance." But I still thought that I could read myself through it, or that I could think myself through it and conquer this change in life circumstance. And part of it was, of course, feeling unaccomplished. With me, it gradually sunk in because I'm very persistent, and I kept thinking, I can get through this. I can still do. I'll still have a career. I worked on different types of careers I could have. Even got over halfway through a doctorate in clinical psychology when I had finished my coursework in the education administration doctorate, emphasis in organizational leadership. But I wasn't there. I went ahead and worked on this doctorate in clinical psychology because I realized I wouldn't be hired in education. A couple of my friends from USC, one was in her area of specialization was personnel, and she worked as a personnel administrator already in a district while she was finishing her degree, her doctorate. And she said, you're done with education now. Just insurance-wise, you are unhirable with your back as it is after that surgery. Their insurance will not allow you as an employee with as bad as your back was damaged and the all that they had to do in 2 surgeries. So they said, one shove from a kid in the hallway, even on intentionally or accidentally, and their insurance just isn't going to go for it. So you're done. Find another career. So but I wanted to finish the dissertation. I'd gone so far because there's part of me still that thought I was good at denial. Keep thinking that I could somehow, God wasn't really doing this to me, that this wasn't really going to end up this way. I was going to overcome. Then I went through, my Johnny Erickson Tata phase because I had read that book before. Maybe it would have been 8 years or 9 years prior. And it struck me so deeply. And I thought, well, I'm going to be like her then. I'm going to make it through. So I got watercolors even and started this little card company, Potpourri Publishing Company, out of my home and drew the greeting cards with black ink and got those printed. And then I would watercolor tint in, just lightly tint each one by hand. And of course, they were all religious themed, but different types of greeting cards. I did a children's book. I forget what it was called. Anyways, it was one man who he took it to New York. He was so impressed with it, but it didn't get anywhere. But I sold it myself. And I had 200 copies, but all that painting and doing all that and then putting it together with a plastic binder. And those sold out quickly at the little local shop and a couple other places, and people wanted them, would order them from me. So I had 200, little over 200, and sold those, and they sold for $10 each back in 1988. So that was good. That helped financially, but it was a lot of work. And I got, so I could not sit, I could not stand to do it. I would kneel, try kneeling, one kneel on a chair, the legs standing straight, stand, lean over at the counter to paint them. It was just too much. And they would be too costly to four color print them. Way too costly. And part of the charm was the home look to them too, the handcrafted look. So, but yeah, and then when I moved back to the Midwest, people there were so into crafts, but they thought that my cards that were $1 each were a whole pack for $1. Totally unrealistic about the time it takes for something like that. Even the cost of the fine cardstock I used and the printing cost. So no, so that little company was over when I moved to the Midwest. My small town, they weren't into that. They couldn't understand that. So the other thing is that the other thing that this person felt with her disability is that don't offer anything to the temporal world anymore. We feel lost and not useful, that we're not offering anything of importance of worth to the temporal world. And that's a very hard thing to get over. But I want to say, here's this first, I'm going to take it by sections from this person who left these comments. How was I able to make peace with or come to terms with my life after the accident? And I'll include after the surgery. They were two big things to get over, and the divorce was huge to get over. So I had three things that were huge. Health is, well, four, the career also. Loss of a career for good. Health issues like that come out of nowhere completely alters how we think about our future. So that's something I'll discuss. And still learning to accept our new path, since it relates, her life, she said, related so much to my story. She wanted to know how to learn and how, and that she's still learning to accept her new path. And so I'm going to talk about how I had to learn to accept my new path. But these are just little bits and pieces of things that would gradually I would find out and realize, like that I was done with education, because I was setting myself up to be in administration soon. Like right away, I thought I would be, because I was finalist in these great districts for assistant vice principal of curriculum. And then dean of students, they wanted me for that. Another district did. So things were looking great. I'd be able to do these things. No, I was unhireable because of the insurance glitch. I wouldn't be hireable because of my damaged spine. Too much liability for the district. So I remember, this is just one thing, right before the surgery, the surgeon came in. It was the night before he did, evening before, was explaining different things and told me now that these are the, or maybe I'd asked him, how well will I be? And he was saying, will I be able to water ski? I was just, 36? I still wanted to water ski. I was a big water skier, all growing up and through high school and college and young adult and all. Oh, yes, you'll be able to water ski. Could I do ballet? I'd just started ballet, trying to strengthen my spine muscles, actually. But also, I felt so awkward all the time. The divorce really hit me. It took away a lot of self-esteem. And so I was taking ballet. I wanted to be more gracious in my movement, in my stance and all, because I was so beaten down, felt like I wasn't attractive, I wasn't worth anything. So would I be able to do ballet? I wanted to develop grace of movement and to build up my beaten down self-esteem for being a dumpy, being divorced, being dumped. All these other women he was attracted to, and evidently, obviously. So, but no, but then we got down to the surgery, and he was being serious with me. I mean, I was serious before with all these questions, but he said, well, I think we were talking about the percentage of successes. My mom was very worried because she had heard terrible things about back surgeries not being successful. And another person, the person who had hired me from Cal State San Diego to teach, that summer I had a graduate class I was teaching in education with people getting their master's degrees. And I had to quit it after just maybe 3 times a meeting with them or twice because of my back. And then the surgery, and she called, don't have the surgery. Don't have the surgery. I've heard of too many failures. Then you'll be done. Don't do it. Don't do it. Can't you get by? Well, no, I couldn't. I couldn't. I was crawling at that point, or dragging myself across the floor with my 4-year-old, that wasn't going to work with a little boy like that. And my daughter's having to deal with it all. So no, but I said, what are the statistics with this surgery, my surgery? And he was honest, he went 75%, 50%. And he said, a rare few might be 10%. And I didn't even think that would be me. I'm not a 10%er type. I was determined that night before that surgery, I was going to be at least 75% success rate with that surgery. I was going to be good, It's going to be successful, at least 75%, back to work, back to water skiing, doing ballet, active with my kids. And as we knew, within 24 hours, I had the 2 surgeries. I had 16 and a half hours worth of surgery with dying in between. For a good 40 minutes, I was dead. In and out, but a long stretch then, probably 20 minutes of death, and then in and out of my body quite a bit before then, when Lovita good lad would yell, breathe, 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 to me. And she'd have her hand over my mouth. I had no idea what was going on other than something not right. But so I'd had all those surgeries, and it still didn't register. I was in the hospital 18 or 19 days and had to have an ambulance had to drive me back to the town I lived in, and a friend from the last school I'd been in, or the school before last, happened to find out I was in the hospital, and she came, she saw me, she burst into tears. And I thought, well, what's this? I didn't realize how bad I looked. I looked terrible. And she then found out I had died, and, it was a miracle I was back. And so she stayed with me until my parents could get there. And it was quite something. But even then, and my parents, I realized they were stunned with how bad it was and how long it was taking me to improve. And, starting out sitting for 1 minute, that was after I think 6 weeks. Could try sitting for 1 minute every hour, then moved up to 5 minutes, and all these reports back to the doctor, and well, try this or try that, and well, no, you aren't ready for work yet. Of course I knew I wasn't, but I was determined. I thought I could. If he had said yes, I would have gotten my body there and collapsed. That's how I just keep pushing. That's my attitude, is I push beyond normal. And I don't know, it's just something in me that, well, I didn't want to face it. But finally, he had to say, you're disabled. Even then, I thought, well, I can still do something, I'll be a clinical psychologist then. And I loved that. And I was laying on the floor taking the classes. And this professor, in fact, I think he was the president of the school, he saw me at lunch eating at some Mexican restaurant. It was in San Diego, Old Town. They had classroom spaces there. And I had the one knee down on the ground and the other leg hooked over the edge of the chair seat. And that's how I would eat. So I wouldn't be, I could have, my chest was about here to the table and I could eat like a normal person, kinda. And I didn't have any inhibitions. I was determined. I didn't care what it looked like. But he came over to me and he was very serious. And he says, I don't see how that. It's the first time he saw how I had to eat. So I wouldn't be sitting and killing my back sitting, because I needed that to get home for the hour and 15-minute drive home. I had to have that sitting time. And then that would wipe me out. I'd have pain sieges then, like every 2 to 3 weeks, from the extra sitting I did just having to drive, to drive places. Any sitting would add up and take me out eventually, soon. Collapse, big pain siege, and then get the injections, be knocked out, kids handling things, the girls for the 24 to 36 hours, I'd be in bed, out of it. And, just not out of it crazy or anything, just knocked out because the pain was that bad. The doctor had to inject me to literally knock me out. And I would just sleep. I wouldn't be aware. And neighbors then would come check on the kids, and the girls would watch their little brother and get them to bed and get the food for all of them. I didn't eat then. I had no appetite. And when I would be knocked out like that, and just relieved to get away from the horrific pain sieges of these headaches that were violent. And they weren't migraines. They were what's called spinal headaches. It was like the surgeon had it right. He says, like a cap. My head's a cap, a bathing cap, tight, and you're peeling it off. And I said, yeah, that's it. It's an all over kind of thing. And and oddly, in 2020, when I had the pump surgery 4 years ago, October 20th, somehow that pump installed in me, pain pump, those spinal severe headaches stopped. First time in, 32 years or something like that, or longer. 33 years, yeah. What a miracle and grace that was. But I had eating difficulties then from the pump surgery. So, but I'd rather have that than those spinal headaches with no injections here. And pain medicines didn't do it, not even taking loads of them. So had to be the injections, real strong stuff. So we went through all this, and the 10% was not even in my mind as a potential. And but then afterwards, later, 2-3 months later, I kept asking, why me, just to myself and to God. And then finally I said, well, why not me? I read enough guideposts and other things, the Johnny Erickson Tata book, and realized other people are the 10%. Why not me? God chose me to be the 10%. And so that's when I got all these ideas of I was still going to do great for God. Wanted to do something great for God. That was my prayer when I was like in the 8th grade. This in the back of an auditorium, my mom was having this play production with her drama class, high school drama class she taught. And I was back there waiting for it to start, and I just had this deep inner prayer of wanted to do something great for God. I was telling God that I want to do something great for you with my life. That's why it was always so hard for me to figure a career. I was told I could have done anything, from being a doctor to whatever. My dad thought we all needed to have a teaching degree, because that had worked out for my mom. And no matter what else, he wanted us all to get teaching degrees. So we did. But only one really was a good teacher. And then she had a depression and anxiety disorder and couldn't teach. She always, from early childhood on, wanted to be an elementary school teacher. But my eldest sister and myself never wanted to teach. But we did, out of respect for my dad. And it does make sense. It's if you have a family, your hours are similar. So, and if something happens, you can get a job and take care of your children. And that's exactly what happened to me. But it didn't last long because of the surgery, and God had other plans. So that was a big thing of facing it. Why not me? Why shouldn't it be me as opposed to other people? So that was a big turning point for me when I realized, who did I think I was? That I shouldn't have that happen. That I shouldn't fill that 10% slot in a way that's nothing you can really work your way out of. And no one can do anything for you. And it's like the one second opinion surgeon from Scripps La Jolla said, you're going to have to learn to live a life you never dreamed you'd ever have to live. And I'm so sorry. So that's what we do. And it takes, though, God to help us figure out what it is. And for me, it was to be a hermit. He had told me that beforehand. I just didn't put it together. And I didn't know I would be Catholic way back. Would have never have thought it. And here I am, a Catholic hermit, a Christian hermit. I still want to write books, and I hope to. I'm doing this video now. I was writing blogs for years, since 2005. I have blogs online. I'm a better writer than a talker, and it's more of a direct connection with the Holy Spirit or something, with inspiration to write. But this seems to be working out better. Seems to be what Holy Spirit wants of me more. And in this, I can be more vulnerable and see myself more as I am. I can see my flaws better and hear my flaws and know my mistakes. It's more humbling, the talking is. So, but that's just initial things. There's more, but yeah, why shouldn't I be the 10%? Why not me? And then the next thing is how to be very good 10%er. And in what God wants. See, that's the next phase of what God wants of the 10% that I can be, that I am. And yes, and then for me, it helped to not watch TV or movies. It was too painful, for one thing. And it wasn't really helping me adapt to see other people living their lives out in the world, and even in the films they're in the world. Every now and then, if there was a humor one, my dad was there. He would bring these humorous videos because he read Norman Cousins, something about keeping laughter in times of trial, or And then also Norman Vincent Peale, the art of positive thinking. But I think it was Norman Cousins who was in with the humor. That humor helps healing. And it's true, you got to keep a sense of humor. So I would watch those, and they do lift me up. And now, though, I actually like these British ones where I like their accents, I like the beauty of the scenery, and I like the ones where the evil is conquered and justice rules. That relieves if I'm tense or anxious or tired and frustrated by things in the world going on. Watching one of those will put me to sleep and relieve anxiety. So you find different things. Dogs. It's enough now. At different phases that help. But you have to rely on the Holy Spirit all the way. Guide and get you going. Not so much other people if they haven't been through it. I still have people who are mentally geared that I can be healed and that I should be healed and that I'm not good enough as I am. So I am good enough for God. God bless. Dogs are getting a little bit carried away.